Hello everybody, and I am back for another video. So in celebration of 2026, isn't that crazy? It's already 2026. 2025 felt like it went by in a flash. But in celebration of it, I want to talk about what makes a good beginning for book series. May that be in a book series or a standalone or just books in general. I said book series, allow me to correct myself. And I think it's a very fascinating subject because we can all bicker about it all the time because there are many different types of endings. I like to think of there being really two types of endings. Or, sorry, not endings, beginnings. Actually, I'd say there's more like three, but the third one's very rarely used. So let me go ahead and start talking about them. I want to talk about the types of endings, and then I want to explain what I think is the best kind of ending, and I think is really fascinating to talk about these kinds of things. What makes a good beginning, and what are aspects of it? So, what are aspects throughout all three of these types that make them good or great? So, I want to talk about my favorite type of beginning, and that's the en medias res beginning. And I think Discovery by J.A.J. Minton uses this a lot. I actually absolutely love its use of en medias res. I am probably butchering the Latin, but that's what it is. So en medias res is in the middle of things. That is, we are starting in the middle of a story. We aren't bothering with the setup. We are bothering with setup, but it's not exactly the traditional manner of setup. And that means we are not taking the time to prepare for the big life-changing event. We've just started the story, and we're in the middle of it. So what's fascinating is, like, the very first chapter is, I don't even know how to describe it to you, but J.J. Minton do such a wonderful job with this beginning. Like, they get you hooked immediately. It's like a monologue. It's a great old monologue. I could go on and try to narrate it, but I won't, because I will do it an injustice. I guarantee it. Oh, but it's such a good monologue. And it sets things up. It sets up that there is this divine game of gods playing with human pieces on the board. That's just going on here. It sets everything up, and it sets this character up as someone was who has made a mistake. And you're like, huh. You start to ask, what did he do? What did he screw up? How did this event happen? What is going on in his head? Or we know what's going on in his head, but why is what's going on in his head now what's going on? And I don't want to spoil anything, of course, so there won't be really any spoilers for anything here, so don't worry about that. But I think it's fascinating. It's so well done. And then, oh, it just makes you want to read the whole thing immediately. They did such a fantastic hook. Like, one of the best hooks I've ever seen for a novel. By far. And you just get to sit with it for a second. And after you see that beginning, you just have to think to yourself, wow, what an amazing job! Like, it immediately drops you into the middle of things, or really, you have no idea where you are. You're at some point in the story, but definitely not at the beginning, and yet you have this man talking to you in a monologue as if he's some sort of god. And you're asking yourself, what happened? How did we get here? And actually, I take it back. This is a fourth type of ending. This isn't en medias res. Allow me to apologize. This is not en medias res. This is that style, and you've seen it before. You've seen it somewhere. I guarantee it. Like, whether it be Megamind or Attack on Titan, you have seen this style. Except this is a very unique way of doing it. Don't get me wrong. This is impressive. What they did here is just beyond ambitious, but you gotta give them respect for what they pulled off. And that is, we're going to take a point in the future of this story, and we're going to give it to you right now. Now, you're not going to have the context for it, and you're going to have to figure out what happened, but it gives you something to think on. It's like those dumbasses, like me, who go to the end of a book. I used to do this, by the way, yes. And read like a page, just a random page. It doesn't have to be the last page, but a random page. Or a random scene. And then, as they're reading the book, they get to ask themselves, hey, what's going on here? How did we get from here to that point? And I think it's a very fun thing to do if you aren't invested in the story. But, of course, when the author is dictating what you see, it's a lot different. But, point remains, they take this moment far off into the future of their story, and then they start to present us with the story. Oh, but where do they start? That's what's so brilliant about this novel. They start in multiple places. That's why I wanted to talk about Discovery. This is really just an excuse to talk about Discovery. With each different act, we get a different POV to start. But what's so brilliant about every act, with the exception of one, and I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to spoil things, and that is, they start in the middle of things. In, what's it called? The beginning of Act 1. I believe we have a character, she is going up to meet her boss. She's being active. She's about to do something, and she's doing it with determination. She knows, or she doesn't know what she's about to do, I'm pretty sure, but she's going to do something. And I think that's so good of a character introduction. That's a great beginning, because it tells you we're going to be in an active story, where characters are bringing things about. The actions of characters cause the story. And I think that is a fantastic beginning, because it sets everything up. It sets up a tone. It sets so many things up. Like, the prologue to this is a brilliant prologue. It sets up what the tone is going to be like. It sets up the scale of the story, and then lets you figure out the rest. And I think those are the two most important things. When you have a beginning to a story, you must set up a tone and a scale. And I think that's so well done here. Really, Discovery is a masterclass in writing. If you want to study writing, this is one of the books you should. I promise you. This is a brilliant story. And I just think the beginning to it is so brilliant. It's so fantastic. And then let's talk about another brilliant beginning. Assassin's Apprentice. I think, but it's very different. It sets up the scale and it sets up the tone. But these are two very different scales. I think these are two important books to put next to each other, because this sets up a scale of grandness. We are on a cosmic scale. And then we have something like Assassin's Apprentice, which sets up a very personal scale. The very beginning of this book is Fitz narrating to you. He's talking to you about a history of the Six Duchies. He's talking about the history of his world, of his home, and in relation to him. He's not talking about the history of the Six Duchies in relation to anybody else. He's doing it in relation to himself. And that sets everything up as, oh, this is going to be a very personal story. This is going to be a very internal, thought-focused story. And that's the story you're in for. And then, of course, the tone, I think, is very interesting, because tone can be played with. Tone doesn't... I know I said a story should set up their tone in the beginning, but a story can trick you. And I think that's I can't think of anything that I have here that's going to be a perfect in that sense, but I think a story can trick you. It can subvert your expectations, and it can say, "Oh, here's the beginning. It's going to be a light-hearted story." No, let me tear away all your joy. If I had Oshinoko, I'd pull it up and show it to you. Actually, you know what? Give me a second. I do have something that is the perfect example of subverting tone. And you know what that is? It's One Piece. Or, well, maybe not even in subverting tone. It's the tone of One Piece is crazy. One Piece has actually one of the most brilliant grasps on what tone is that it's impeccable. Most of the series, you're gonna be just laughing, having a good time. It's whimsical, it's brilliant, it's wonderful. But what's fascinating is One Piece gets dark. If you think I'm wrong, I mean, One Piece is whimsical, it's joyous, it's wonderful. But then it talks about things like human trafficking, othering, uh, so many deep, horrible, dark things. And yet One Piece still has hope. It's so whimsical that it can still look at these things, not be, what's the word? It cannot be rude. It's not disrespectful to these events. I think in fact, it's trying to be extremely respectful. And yet even then, it has hope. It doesn't make light of these situations, yet it's still whimsical. It doesn't lose the whimsy. It's such a brilliant grasp on its tone. It has its tone in a chokehold, and then when it's ready, it drops the bomb and says, "Oh, ha ha ha! No, 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 no. Let's pull out some classic tragedy." One Piece has this brilliant, fantastic way, and this is not a spoiler, mind you. Like, you can find it in probably the third volume. If you know the story of Chushu or Shushu or whatever his name was, it's a dog. He's a little dog whose owner died when these pirates came in to invade. And I mean, what else can you say? It's such a wonderful small thing, and it's silly, but it's an aspect of a tragedy, and he makes you kind of feel bad for the dog. He lost his owner, his loyal master, the one he loves, and who fed him every day, and it's just so hurtful. And yet, while doing something like that, it has this deep respect and remains whimsical. It remains funny and joyous and upbeat. It is a masterclass in tone. And the very beginning of that reflects that. Yet, I know I said a beginning should reflect tone. And One Piece's beginning does reflect tone. I mean, Luffy is in a barrel, for God's sake. It's absurd. Why is he in a barrel floating in the middle of the ocean? And then he just pops out and starts beating people up. What else is more insane than that? And yet, there are times in this story where it's dark and grim. And so you can think of that as a subversion of the initial tone. And I think that's fascinating. I think tone doesn't have to be set from the beginning. Just because, like, if you think about it, we can go 10 chapters in and then have an inciting incident, and then boom, the whole story shifts on its head, and no longer are we in this happy-go-lucky village. We're killing people. We're at war. Something like that. I mean, you see it, it's the common heroes archetype, really. They're at peace, no war, and then things are stirring up, and then boom, the ice breaks, and everything comes crashing down. Now, let's talk about a different type of story. What's another great type of story? And I've already told you about En Medias Res. I've spoken about Hobbes. I don't know what I would call this, honestly. Whatever Hobbes did is like... It's not quite what Discovery did. It's a monologue that sets everything up very well. It's honestly shocking. But you know who else did a great beginning? Chance Dillon. He did a fantastic beginning, I want to add to you. I mean, just what he did with the beginning tells you so many different things. It tells you that there's going to be a character-focused story, that there's going to be mystery. Well, I think Discovery does that too, but that there's going to be a mystery. And beyond that, he also talks about how... Ah, crap, I lost my train of thought. But he talks about so many different things. He talks about his tone, too. And he gives a sense of scale. I don't really know how I could describe the scale, though. That it's going to be... Actually, I have it here for you. It's going to be in an escalating level. Because what Chance does with his beginning is he de-escalates the scale so that the rest of the story can escalate the scale. Do you see what I'm saying? What's so brilliant about his beginning is that we're at a pretty big scale at the beginning. I'd like to say that. And we're talking about huge things between two characters. And then we bring it down to a cottage life. And after the prologue's over, we can finally start to escalate from something around cottage life to the grand epic that is the story that's about to unfold. And, I mean, how cool is that? I think that's another fantastic way to get the reader into things, or the audience. You de-escalate. You show the beginning de-escalating. You know another great story that does this? The Way of Kings. Both of these are masterclasses in what they do in the first chapter. That is a de-escalation. The Way of Kings in the first chapter shows these people putting up their weapons. And that's a de-escalation. That is a withdrawal from war. That is a withdrawal from violence. While Chance is a withdrawal from the grand narrative. It's a withdrawal from the huge epic scale. Now, I'm not saying that what happens in the prologue doesn't stray from the huge epic scale, or doesn't have impacts on the huge epic scale, but it brings it down to a smaller home. It brings it down to a smaller narrative. While something like Discovery will just run off the rails and say, have fun. We're going to keep this level of crazy, just nuts, balls to the wall scale. We're big. And I think that's fascinating. Because, like, this and Robin Hobb, actually. Both Robin Hobb and Discovery are examples of they set the scale at the beginning, they keep the scale. I mean, Realm of the Elderlings does stray a bit. Like, it does get bigger by the end, I'd say. But at the end, really, the scale doesn't change much. I mean, no matter how grand the scale of the narrative, the scale of the story is always the same for Hobb. And that's not a bad thing. It's, in fact, a very respectful thing. Here's the story that I told you I was gonna tell you. This is the scale. I'm not changing that. The Way of Kings, though, I think it's a very interesting beginning. Because if you look at the whole of the Stormlight Archive that exists right now, it's I wouldn't say it's a bad beginning. It's a great beginning, actually. But the way the scale changes is kind of weird. You know, the beginning of the Stormlight Archive is deeply down to earth. Like, it's deeply internal, and it's also deeply, I kind of want to say personal. Yet, I'd say as the Stormlight Archive goes on, it kind of lost that as in favor of big, of grand narrative. That's an author's choice. They have the right to do that, but I think it's interesting. It's more, for The Way of Kings, it feels more like a launch pad for where we're going from here, rather than here's how it will be. I don't know if that makes sense. But I think another great story that talks about what, like, it's another en medias res story, and that is Sordaneon. And so I think I've spoken to you about two so far, yeah? We've talked about en medias res, we've talked about the looking into the future, and we've also talked about whatever Hobbes is. I really don't know how to talk about this, because it's, well, you know what? It's like from the beginning, you know? It's talking about things from the beginning, which is a very normal story thing to do. I mean, we can look at almost any story, and what it does is we take a minute to breathe. Like, and this is why I can't stand watching most TV shows. They start with a character. They give us a character introduction, and their position, and their lifestyle, and yada yada yada. And then something happens, and that's how they meet our main cast. That kind of drives me nuts. I don't like that much. I'll be perfectly honest with you. That is more like a... I don't really know how to talk about it. Because those aren't the kind of books I like. If they start like they start at a peaceful point, it's the normal journey, you know. Peaceful point, inciting incident, we meet the main cast. It's pretty generic, if you ask me. I don't like it because, if I'm being honest, it's boring. I think it's boring. It's the least interesting of them all, so that's the fourth one. It's the normal, you know. It's, I've introduced you to this character, and now let's wait for the inciting incident, and then boom. And I know you could say, hey, Hobb has that. And I'm going to tell you, not quite. Not quite. I don't really know if I agree with you on that, imaginary listener, audience, viewer. I don't think Hobb really fits that structure. I mean, yes, fits... we really start with the inciting incident, don't we? I mean, Fitz is taken in. He's taken into a building, and then that's the beginning of Assassin's Apprentice. Voila. That's the inciting incident, and then yada yada yada. I think that's interesting. I think that's more interesting than, let's take a minute, let's meet the childhood friends and yada yada yada, and then let's have the inciting incident, and then let's go forward. Now, mind you, it can be done well. I mean, it's the generic, it's the base story method for most stories in something like television for a reason. Lord of the Rings does it. The Way of It Dan does it. It's a very good mechanism, but I do believe personally that it's gotten a little stale. And so, no, it hasn't gotten stale. Allow me to take that back. I'm sorry. I just think that en medias res is more interesting. How about that? I think all the other ones are more interesting. Because, for example, like Sordaneon. What we'll do in Sordaneon is, I mean, it starts off with a death and the reaction to that death. Oh my god, it's so well done. Like, this is a fantastic beginning. the way that we're looking at the world, it sets the scope. It also sets the scale. It's huge and grand, yet also personal and intimate. Very interesting. It sets both of these and juxtaposes them, two things that you typically view as very opposite. If you're going for more grand scale, you're going to see a lot less of that intimateness, and vice versa. But here, it puts them right next to each other. It binds them together. And to L.L. Stevens, kudos to you, because that's an amazing beginning. And then let's talk about Curse the Mistwraith. Actually, it does a mix of things. It's ambition. I think that's always what's so interesting. You can have a mix of these two different types of beginnings. These are just like... It's so fascinating. Because it starts in the middle of things. It starts with a character being taken in. I'm sorry, I just hit the microphone. A character being taken in. And then there's another inciting incident. So really, we start things off with an inciting incident, we calm things down, and then we have a second inciting incident, which properly starts things. And to Janny Wurts, kudos to you, you brilliant mastermind. It's a fantastic beginning. And not only that, it has a fantastic prologue. And I think it's one of the greatest prologues in the universe, in all of fiction, for a specific reason. It not only sets up the tone, it not only sets up the scale, it sets up the kind of themes it wants. It is a microcosm of what it wants you to do. Because if you look at it and you think to yourself, oh, she just told you the theme, you're wrong. I'm not going to tell you what I believe the theme is, because I think you should just decide it on your own. But I'm going to read it out to you. And I think it's very fantastic. It's a fantastic and brilliant prologue. So let me go ahead and start it. The wars of light and shadow were fought during the third age of Athera, and the most troubled and strife-filled era recorded in all of history. At that time, Arathon, called Master of Shadows, battled the Lord of Light through 5 centuries of bloody and bitter conflict. There's the scale. And also a little bit of the tone. So let me go on. If the canons of the religion founded during the period are reliable, the Lord of Light was divinity incarnate, and the Master of Shadow a servant of evil, spinner of dark powers. Temple archives attest with grandiloquent force to be the sole arbiters of truth. There's a little bit of all three. We have the tone, bloody and bitter conflict. Okay, violence, gritty, horror, ugly. Scale, the most trouble and strife-filled era recorded in all of history. There's the scale. Violence on a grand scale. All right. But then we get a sentence, a specific word that gives it all away. If the canons of the religion founded during the period are reliable. If, I want to hone in on that word, if. Why is it asking the question? It's asking a question there. Why is it asking a question? Because it sets up a great theme of the whole narrative, and that is choice. If. And that is, do you believe it? Do you believe it? What do you believe? So let's continue. Yet contrary evidence supports a claim that the Master was unjustly aligned with evil. Fragments of manuscript survive, which expose the entire religion of light as fraud and award Arathon the attributes of saint and mystic instead. What else does that do? It gives you two options, and it says, choose. It gives you these options and asks you, choose between them. It wants you to choose. It wants you to decide right here, right now, and then later on, which one do you think is right? Which one do you believe is the truth? Choose which one. Let me go on. Because the factual account lay hopelessly entangled between legend and theology. Sages in the 7th Age meditated upon ancient past and recalled through visions the events as they happened. Contrary to all expectation, the conflict did not begin on the council stair of Atara, or even on the soil of Athera itself. Instead, the vision started upon the wide oceans of the splinter world, Dasen Ilur. That does another thing. It sets up more scale. It sets up that this story is not just a narrative that is taking place on one planet, but on multiple planets. And it asks you a question again. What do you think? Here is something that we know. So here are the actions that are being taken to discover. And now, the last sentence, which I think is brilliant. It ties it all together. What a brilliant prologue. What a brilliant beginning. This is the chronicle the sages recovered. Let each who reads determine the good and evil for himself. You can say that this story is one that's asking you to decide what is good, what is evil, what is bad, what is good, what is righteous. I disagree with you. I think it's lying to you. I think that this sentence is a microcosm of what Janny wants you to know from this series. That is a great introduction. And that is, well, I mean, choose. Choose. Right here. Let each who reads determine the good and evil for himself. Determine it. Everyone who reads, choose it. Choose. Do you think that Lysair is good and Arathon is evil? Do you think that Arathon is good and Lysair is evil? Or is there an in-between? She wants you, the reader, to choose. Choose it. A great beginning. I've hidden this for most of the video. Does 3 things. And that's why I think this prologue is perfect. It sets the tone, it sets the scale, and it sets the themes. It is a micro, but not only is it a part of the themes, but it's a microcosm of the story. What this prologue does is it crafts an internal narrative that propels the story forward. It sets the story up perfectly, and any of these books can do the same thing. They do, in fact. In some way. They are a microcosm. They are an inciting incident. But what's so good about this isn't even a page. Look at this. Not even a page. Not even half a page. And yet it conveys... It's not even a scene. It's telling you. It is a storyteller telling you and asking you to choose. It is a storyteller that wants you to choose. It is a microcosm of the greater themes of the narrative. I believe that each and every one of these should do that. With a great beginning, not only is it setting scale, setting tone, but it is a miniature theme of the narrative. It is a small form of the great big theme. You know who else does? Chance does this. Who else does this? I believe Sordaneon does this. I believe Discovery does this. In fact, I would dare say these three do it fantastically. Really. Like, kudos to them. Discovery. My queen is taken. He took. If you've read the book, you know what that means. Why does that tie into the narrative? It does. It's very well done, mind you. Sordaneon. What's his name? Dorilian's mother is killed. And then he runs away with family. And there are other things, but he takes his brother. That's his most important thing. That's the first and foremost thing. He takes his brother. Look at that. There's your theme. Family is important. Mercy, Tears of the Fallen. I actually don't want to talk about this one. There's a reason for this, by the way. It's not that, it's just that the prologue is long, and if I spoil it for you, I'm spoiling the prologue. So I can't do that. Just know that Chance does it too. He does, what is it? Family. Family here. It's the reason things change in this. Actually, let me go ahead and talk about it now. In the prologue of Mercy Tears the Fallen, things happen because family. That's the most important part of it all. But there's a little more to it than that. I can't talk about it. I'm sorry. I can't talk about the big thing that Chance does, and it's really brilliantly done. And then, yeah. There you go. Actually, One Piece too. Let me talk about One Piece too. Let me just hone it all in. One Piece. What does it do? Luffy's first action? Well, what is it? He saves someone. It shows everything you need to know about his character. He doesn't care. He likes you as a person. And that means he's going to help you. That's how the story is going to play out. And that's beautiful, it's simple, it's also wonderful. That is what makes a great ending. Something that encapsulates your themes, that captures your scale, and that captures your tone. Voila. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've gone on for, oh my god, how long is that? 38 minutes. Holy shit, I'm sorry. But I had such a great time talking about this. My throat is hurting now. That's why this video has to stop. But thank you all so much for watching. And I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic day. Tell me, what do you think makes a good beginning? Did I miss anything? Really, anything. Do you think I missed anything? I want to hear it from you. What makes a great end, or what makes a great beginning? And to you all, I hope you have an absolutely amazing 2026. I'm going to have my bi-weekly reader out tomorrow. Apologies for taking so long with that. And I will see you all next time.